ENT 110 students, hi. Welcome back. Catherine Robertson here. We are talking about Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about Chapter 4, Creativity, Innovation, and Invention. And the three sections that we're looking at in Chapter 4, Tools for Creativity and Invention, or Innovation, Creativity, Innovation, and Invention, how the three differ. And how do we develop ideas, right? And how do we develop new innovations and new inventions? And so really Chapter 4 goes into some of the ways that we can be creative, right? And how, we can foster our creativity as it being an essential element of innovation and inventiveness. And an essential part of what drives entrepreneurship in this country, right? And so some of the, problem solving, typically when we're thinking about creativity or innovation relative to entrepreneurship, we think of how, once we identify that there is a gap or we identify that there is some sort of missing link or missing component, right? Or something is missing that we can fill that gap, right? We see an opportunity or we see a need that could be filled. And then we start to think, how do we do that, right? And so what are some of those tools that we can use? We don't just have to kind of start from thin air, right? And think, well, how can I be creative, right? There are actual frameworks that exist. A few are in the textbook here talking about ways that we can be creative. And so the process really of creativity, there are some things that we can look at. There's this thing in Figure 4.3, there's this idea, the empathetic design cycle, which is human-centered or human-centric, right? And so we empathize with the individuals that are in need of a certain invention, right? Or of a certain, how do we fill the need for an individual or a group of individuals, right? And so then once we think about what is that need, then we define it, right? And then we come up with some ideas as to how we answer the defined need, right? How do we fulfill that need? What would be some of the things that we could do? We come up with some prototypes, and then we figure out what idea or service might fill that need. Then we run some tests, and that is really our cyclical process of this empathetic design cycle. And so that's one way of looking at a design cycle. And another way is this thing called 6 thinking hats. And you can actually take coursework, like a day-long workshop in this idea of 6 thinking hats. This 6 thinking hats, it's Figure 4.4 in your text. You do these exercises that are designed to have participants focus on particular approach to a problem or discussion. And the 6 hats, right? If you wanted to do research, one individual focuses on that. The emotional side of things, the logical side, encouragement, creativity, and enforcement. Those are the 6, right? If we're thinking of this idea of 6 thinking hats, which you can get trained in that area and get trained in and do exercises that if you have some need that's been identified either in a community or a need, from a tech standpoint, that a direction that we need to go, right? How do we then move forward and come up with ideas? In this chapter, we start to talk about different types of innovation and disruptive technology, things that completely change the direction. Things like Uber and Lyft, right? Change from their traditional transportation. Amazon, Bitcoin changed this idea of digital currency from those are considered disruptive technologies, right? They're not typical, they're not just changes to things that we have, they're completely new ideas. All right. 4.2 starts to talk about innovation and invention and creativity, how they are different. And so those 3 different things, we look at the concepts and then we look at the description. Creativity being the ability to develop something original, particularly an idea or representation of an idea. An innovation is a change then that adds value to an existing product or service, where an invention is something truly new. So 3 different types of ideas, and there's a linear versus lateral thinking in Figure 4.5, so make sure that you do a quick review of that. There's Drucker's 7 sources of innovation, right? And so just to review a couple of those, we look at what are some ways we can find innovation amidst things, right? So sometimes new knowledge comes about then that lends to new technologies, right? Changes in perception, the way we look at things that are important to value, things that we value now in 2024 are different from things that people valued maybe 30 years ago, right? So a change in perception changes what's important to us. And changes how we use our time, for instance. So we have, Drucker has 7 different sources of innovation. And what else do I want to tell you about chapter 4? The scientific method in 4.8, thinking about, and also closely in line is Elon Musk's 6-step decision-making process. But most of you have heard of the scientific method. Come up with, first you find an observation, right? And we use this and we don't even realize it in our daily lives a lot, right? And you can really hone this skill. So you make an observation. I feel like traffic does not work well at 12th or at 8th in Pittsburgh, right? That's the observation. Ask the question, and why doesn't it work well? What is the issue? So say you're a traffic engineer. You might say, then what is the issue at that particular intersection? And then you form a hypothesis. Well, I think that this might be the issue that we should try to look into. Then let's make a prediction. Well, if we maybe took out there's 2 lights right there, back to back. There's the light that allows you to go into the Westery Plaza. And like 15 feet later, there is the light. If you're heading east from west, there's the light that is the actual 8th in Pittsburgh. Maybe that light is a redundancy, the one at the Westery Plaza entrance. And so my prediction is that if we remove that light, so maybe we cover it up and don't have that be a light, how would that change traffic patterns? Giving you an example. And so then we do the experiment. So we would cover that light up and have it not be there for a month and monitor the traffic and see if it has a better flow, or maybe it doesn't have as good a flow. There's issues, right? And so then that's analyze the results. So that's the scientific method process, right? Which many of you are familiar with. Technology. Or I talk about early adopters in classes often. And so technology, there is in figure 4.9, you'll see, particularly in the tech field, there are people that we call early adopters that really want to be the first folks, right? To have the new iPhone 16, right? There's a handful of people. I'm not someone that I'm probably the late majority or a laggard. So if you look at that bell curve, there's a whole host of people that are not that interested in phones. Those are not the people you market to or make a new product for. It's the early adopters that you're thinking about as your key audience, right? When you're designing new products and you're thinking about innovation. What other moving ahead to 4.3, we look at developing ideas. So one of the things that we can look at, there's a couple of figures here. Figure 4.11, prepare, right? The 5 stages of creativity: preparation, and then incubation, like kind of roll it around and figure out how it's going to actually work, and then add insight into that incubation period. And then we come up with the evaluation period. And then once we're in the evaluation period, we figure out what is not working quite right. And then we elaborate on the positive and try to eliminate some of the negative externalities. A couple other models that we're looking at when we're looking at how we describe innovative products, right? Innovative products that are really capture our senses, right? They're deep, indulgent meaning have depth and quality and richness, right? And they really capture they really capture our senses. They're complete, like it's a complete product. We don't feel like the product delivers what it says it's going to deliver. And a lot of times it attaches to us emotionally, right? We get emotion, the experience, right? One of the things that Apple, decades ago at this point, Steve Jobs was really big on what is the experience of the user, right? And so that's the emotional part of product usage. And when we're thinking about innovation, because the user of a new product or of a new innovation has to be attached to it in some way other than just having it be this separate product for it really to take off. All right. And the 5 steps to developing an invention, right? We would all love to be able to just go, let's use these steps and develop something new, right? Number 1, educate yourself in the industry. Number 2, stay organized with your research and thoughts. Do market research. Number 3, and figure out what the marketplace, what's already out there, right? What's not working, what is working, where the gaps are, conduct, and then you have to conduct patent research, finding out, what things have already been patented that you cannot use. And then the final step, develop a prototype. And so that is kind of chapter 4. An overview of chapter 4. I'm going to jump into chapter 5. I'm going to do this all in one video, so bear with me. And this week there is no discussion, but your video intro, I have the link there that you are, and there's 2 short other videos for you to watch. And there's a chapter 4 and 5 homework. All right, so chapter 5, let me open this up. If you are reviewing chapter 5 in the text or in the PowerPoint, is identifying entrepreneurial opportunities. So it goes along with this idea of creativity. And there are 3 sections to chapter 5. Entrepreneurial opportunity, researching potential business opportunities, and how to run a competitive analysis. And spoiler alert, competitive analysis is thinking what's already out there, what's my competition, what's my potential competition, right? What are some companies or products that could actually, maybe they don't fall completely in line, but they could easily kind of move into my industry and be competition without much effort on their end. So I need to keep them, in my sight lines. All right, so 5.1, entrepreneurial, defining this idea of entrepreneurial opportunity and, thinking about this idea that entrepreneurs bring a creative element into and creative value in the economy. Coming up with something new is really then what leads to these larger companies, a new idea or a new process, a new way of thinking. Skipping ahead to figure 5.4, we look at different criteria that, when we think about something as an opportunity, we look at this Venn diagram, right? Is there significant market demand for something? And I default to Shark Tank. Some of you may have seen that show, right? You have the sharks sitting there that are investors, but these are some of the questions that they ask. I mean, if they're going to invest money, they need to know, did you find out, is there significant market demand? Are you making shoes for kittens, right? Which may sound really cute and really fun, but how many people are actually buying it? Is there demand? Have you done your research? Are there significant margins, right? So when you make a product and then you end up selling the product, are you able to make a profit? And are you able to make enough profit to have a little bit of a cushion, right? Or are there really slim margins that the price that you need to put the product at in order for it to sell or be competitive is barely clearing your costs? That's too tight, right? You want to have significant enough margins. It'd be nice to have like a 30%, 20%, 10 at minimum, but 30 would be nice. And what is the market like? Is it a growing market? Is it a strong market structure, or could it fall apart fairly easily with just a few trend changes, right? And what is the size then of the market? So those components, when we look at the 3 of those and how they fit together, it's a pretty important component of when we're thinking of a startup, right? And there's a couple examples there in the text and in the PowerPoint of startups and things that we might want to do. So there are many reasons why small businesses fail, and that 9 out of 10 businesses, it's pretty high, fail within the first 2 years. They just have things like low sales, like they think they're going to have, and we see it around Erie. When a business sounds great, it goes up, we look at it, there's never any cars there, and we're like, well, how did that stay in business, right? It sounded like a good idea. Maybe their price points were just off, or they can't seem to make money. Could be poor location, right? Lack of experience in the industry by the owners or the people in charge of the business. They don't have access to capital, meaning they can't get more money to grow. And so they kind of stagnate. Maybe they don't have a good inventory management system, right? So they don't know how to move their product. They don't have a system of either LIFO or FIFO, right? Products coming in and going out. How are they managing that? Maybe they aren't good at managing, like their accounting system is not great, right? And the other one that is big, and I see this with small businesses, people get excited. They make a little bit of money and then they go on a trip. They immediately pull it out, right? So small businesses, those first couple of years, they have to be very careful of this idea of personal use of funds. They have to be careful not to do that, right? And suck all those funds out that could be actually reinvested into the business. And so those competition is always one as well. If there's a market share that could be snagged, and another business or a business from out of town, or a current business that wants to expand into other areas, it might say, hey, that company over there is like kind of floundering, but there's a lot of money to be made in that specific sector. I think I'm going to jump in. So you might have competition come out of nowhere, right, that has a better way of running than you do as a small business. So it can be very tricky. So small businesses do struggle with some of those ideas. So this chapter, we also talk about the SWOT analysis. And the SWOT analysis is a great way the SWOT analysis can be used to identify strengths and weaknesses. Those are internal situations, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses as an organization? And then we can also see the other two, the O and the T, opportunities and threats, right? And so if you are a business, some businesses, if you are a new business, you could do a SWOT analysis. You could do a SWOT analysis of a competitor. A lot of big companies do like a weekly SWOT at their management meetings, right? To see, okay, let's list our strengths again. Have we turned any of our weaknesses into strengths? Do we have any new weaknesses? Right? And what are some new opportunities on the horizon, external opportunities that we might be able to capture, us versus our competitors capturing them? And what are our threats on the horizon, and how do we mitigate those threats or turn those threats into opportunities? So when you have a SWOT analysis, and maybe I'll pop in a video about a SWOT analysis, but we see those videos. I've shown a few other SWOT videos in other courses if you've had me, and I know other courses that you've had talk about the SWOT analysis. In Figure 511, there are, when we're thinking about a competitive analysis, you think about your company, right? That's like one of the circles in the Venn diagram. What are the things you're offering, right? You think about your customers. Are your customers' needs being met, and how are you meeting their needs? And then the third circle, right, the overlapping circle that we see is this: how are competitors doing it? How are they taking your customers or treating your customers? How are they scooping up or overlapping into your market share, right? And so we look at those three things: your company, customers, and then other competitors. How do those three things fit together, and how do you manage those? All right, so Chapter 5, take a quick review then of Chapter 5. Remember, this week there is no discussion board. I will be going through your discussion boards. I will be updating the grade book. I will be reviewing all of the already submitted videos and adding that video intro, grading that in your grade book. Just peek over in your grade book. You should not have too much in your grade book, but I will clean up your grade book. It does not. It is looking a little. Your grade book is a little wild here. Homework week 1. I see I have quite a few of those to grade. So I'm going to go through all your homework and clean up this grade book. Some stuff carried over. I don't know that overlapped, but I will be working on that this week. You have your homework cut out for you, Chapters 4 and 5. Take a look at Chapters 4 and 5. I think there's 10 or 11 questions there between the two chapters, and they are in one doc. If you are struggling at all with first week's homework or second week, this week's homework, just reach out to me. We